Well, hello everybody and welcome. This is the first week of Business Math. I am your instructor, Pooja Gilani, and this is the lecture recording of Chapter 1. This is something new that we're doing. You know, I've noticed in the past couple of times that I've been teaching Business Math online, many of our students it gets a little frustrating because we meet once a week and there's so much material to cover, and sometimes you know, we just need that extra help. So we're using this concept called a flipped classroom, where I will be recording lectures for you and you'll be watching them at home, and then when we're meeting in class together, which would be during our live lectures, we'll go over some of the homework, we'll go over some of the practice questions so that you'll get the hands-on experience that you need. But in order for that to be successful, I will need you to watch these every time I post them. I'll do the recordings every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and they will need to be done by Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, just so that I can hold you accountable. This will be a part of your attendance grade, so all of these chapter lectures as well as your live lecture will be worth 20% of your grade. But you know what? It's an easy 20%. If you just attend and you send me your summaries, you can bump your entire grade up by 20%, which is 2 letter grades. So if you're struggling at a C, this could help you get an A. So it's 20%, easy points. All you have to do is watch the videos, take notes, and send me the notes that you take. All right. So the very first chapter that we're going to be covering is, of course, Chapter 1. And Chapter 1 is whole numbers, how to dissect and solve word problems. Now, bear with me. If this is a little easy for you, we all learn at different paces, but good for you. If this is something that you need me to go over a couple times, I always say I am more than willing and able to help you every time you need. I had some students, husband was at work and she was with the kids all day, and when he came back and he started taking care of the kids, that's when she was able to actually start studying. And so I would tutor over the phone at 8 p.m. because it was just something that she needed, and I'm more than happy to come up with an arrangement like that for you if you need some additional tutoring. There's so many other videos on YouTube, a great website called Khan Academy that has step-by-step teaching, but hopefully these lectures would be good enough for you as well. Okay, so if you need to reach me, my office hours here on campus are 8 to 5 p.m. My number, I still don't know it. I still get confused. I'm reading it off. 918-610-0027. If you need to text me and it's after hours and you're working, you are more than welcome to text me at, let me put my number down here for you. It is 918-845-2389. I will respond to any text from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Kind of draw the line at that 9 p.m. line. But that's more than enough time. If you ever have any questions, I cannot emphasize this enough. Please get back to me, okay? And I will help you. So let's start with whole numbers. Okay, what whole numbers are the essence, they're the basics, they're the building blocks of all math. If you understand, how do you write down 1,000? How do you write down 1 billion? And how do you, if you get confused with the two, then this is a good time, not with 1 billion and 1,000, but with where the commas are and how many zeros there are, and sometimes it's just so many zeros you don't know how to read them. This is going to really help sort it out for you. I've had a lot of students tell me that one of the things they struggle with is rounding. So we're going to go over rounding here so that'll be a lot easier. And we'll show you some cool tricks because business math is meant to be applied everywhere. During the day, you're shopping and you're just trying to get this quick estimate. You're working with a contractor and he asks you and you want to try to calculate something in your mind. This is how you'll get better at it if you start practicing some of the materials that we cover in this chapter. So that went on for quite a while. I tend to talk a lot, but I will try to get to the point as soon as possible so that you can watch this, get it done with, and complete this assignment. Hope you learn a lot. Okay, so the learning objectives, I'm not going to go there. You can read that on your own time if you like. It's in your textbook. So how do you know what number means what. How do you know if I have 5 zeros, what number it is? If I have 10 zeros, what does it mean? Every number has this, if you look at a number, every digit has a name, it has a place. And the reason that's important is because when we come to rounding, you'll need to know that. So say, for example, look at this insanely long number. It's 1,605,743,891,412. That is a big number. That is about how much we are in debt as a country. That is completely off topic. But now you know what that looks like. So if I was to tell you, for example, what is the place value of the 3? Okay? Look at all those digits. I think there's about 10 digits there. What is the place value of that 3? Well, if you look at this chart, you can look at the 3 and say, wow, 3 is the millions. Make sense? So just look at this, and so you start with the ones, tens, hundreds, comma. We separate them into, after every 3 digits we have a comma, just because if you have 1 and 10 zeros, it's kind of hard to just look at it and say, okay, what does this number mean? And you count the number of zeros, that would take forever. But if you know that there's a comma after every 3, it's easier to read. So don't forget the comma, and then of course the decimal point comes right at the very end. What is a decimal point? The decimal point is the separation between a whole number and all the leftovers. The fraction, the decimal, all of that is what we didn't have enough to make a whole, so it's just our leftovers. That's what the decimal point is. It separates those two. So I don't want to spend too much time on this. I will tell you is that spend a lot of time on this. If you're not comfortable with this, just look at this and get yourself familiar with it. Write this little table on top of your homework assignments. It'll be helpful when you are doing your homework to kind of just line everything up together. So let's move on. I just read that to you. So how do you convert parts to a regular whole number? So when someone says, oh, you know, I earn 2.3, I'm worth 2.3 million. I wish. Okay, how many zeros? If you were to write that out, what does that look like? Well, step number 1. Wherever it says 2.3 million, drop that decimal point and put a comma in there. And then just keep adding zeros at the very end until that first comma, until that first digit lines up. If you look over here, the millions is in the 7th column. Right? So you just want to make sure that you keep adding zeros until that 2 is on the 7th column. So then it would be 2,300,000. And 2,300,000 is the same as 2.3 million. Sometimes it's easier to say 2.3 million, but normally for math, it's easier to have all the numbers out there because just in case you forget to add the zeros later and it can get confusing. So I hope I spent enough time on that. Again, if you have any questions, please let me know. Okay, how do you round whole numbers? Okay, I learned this pretty awesome trick that was very helpful, and I found many of my students like this trick as well. So, step number 1, identify the place value of the digit you want to round. Okay, so we want to round the 3. Okay, that's what we want to do. If they were to say round this to the nearest 100, right, we know it's the 1,110 unit. Okay, I'm kind of guessing that you already understand that. So if you don't, press pause, go back, or rewind, go back, look at that table so that you know what I'm talking about. The 9 is the 1,000, the 3 is the 100, the 6 is the 10, and the 2 is the unit. And so if someone wants to say round to the nearest 100, okay, what's the 100? 1, 2, 3, 4, it's the 3rd one. Okay, so that's the one that we want to do. Okay, that's step number 1. Step number 2 is look at the number on the right. Right, the number immediately after the one that we want to round. Okay, then you do this little rhyme that really helps. 4 or less, just ignore. 5 or more, add 1 more. Okay, so we're looking at the 3, and we want to round the 3. So step number 2 is to look at the 6. Now we do the rhyme. Is that 6 4 or less, or is it 5 or more? It's 5 or more, right? 6 is more than 5. So we add 1 more, because that's the rhyme. 4 or less, just ignore. 5 or more, add 1 more. Okay? So that 6 is more, so we add 1. What do we add it to? To the number that we are rounding. Remember, that is the one that we care about. So we care about the 3, so we want to add it to the 3. Okay, so if you add 1 to 3, it becomes 4, and then you just knock out the other 2 and make them zeros. So if you wanted to round 9362, you would change the 3 to a 4, and then you would just knock out the rest, because you rounded it, now you don't take care, now you're done with it, so it would be 9400. Okay? Okay, so if they say round all the way, what do they mean? Okay, if they say round this number all the way, well, it means round it to the leftmost digit. So 7843, 7,843. The number that we want to round is that 7. Okay? So step number 1, we identify the digit, the 7. That's the one we want to round. Step number 2, identify the digits to the right, which is the 8. Now we look at the 8 and we sing our little rhyme. 4 or less, just ignore. 5 or more, add 1 more. So 8 is more than 5, so we add 1. But what do we add it to? To the one that we identified. So if it's the 7, we add 1 to the 7, right? And 7 plus 1 becomes 8. And now that we've rounded it, everything else becomes 0. All the other digits become 0. So 7,843 is rounded to 8,000. Why do we use this? Why do we round? Well, if I was to ask you how many people are there in this world, right? Would you tell me 7,400,000,000? What? No, I don't know what. That number is always changing. Every second or minute, there's a baby being born, and unfortunately, someone is dying at a slower rate, right? So, you would say, oh, there's about 7 billion people in this world. About. It's actually closer towards 6.8 billion. But you round that up, and you give me a good estimate. Oh, there's about 7 billion. Does it make sense? What's the difference to me between 6.8 billion and 7 billion? Honestly, in the conversation, in what we're trying to say, not much. Okay, but if I wanted to estimate, you know, say for example, the average human drinks, I don't know, 2 liters of water every day. How many liters of water are consumed? Do you see what I mean? It's easier to say 6, instead of saying 6,800,000,000, 900, whatever, instead of getting that long number, it would be really long to calculate. So I would just say 7 billion times 2, about 40. Okay, so on average, maybe this world consumes 14 billion liters of water every single day. Do you see what I mean? Okay, how do you dissect and solve a word problem? Pay attention to this, because you're going to get quite a few word problems, but there's a system of doing it. And if it's hard, you know, I found a lot of people that they're so practical that they just get these word problems. And if that is you, good for you. But I know I used to, and many people sometimes struggle and say, okay, so what exactly are you looking for? And I know when the teacher is doing it, but when I have to do it myself, I kind of get confused. So once I figured out this my system, it was actually, you know what, I can do word problems. They're very helpful. So, number 1, state the problems. Okay? Another way of saying that is, what are you trying to calculate? What is the question? Number 1, what is the question? What are we trying to figure out? Okay? One of the worst things you can do, and I have done this, so I can say, is that you keep on, you see all these numbers, and you go on, and you're just excited about, I can do this, and you solve, and you get this answer. Honestly, I've done this before. And you're like, oh, that's not even what they were looking for. They were looking for this number, which was just this plus this, and it's such an easy calculation. But because I didn't read the question, I went on this entire long calculation, and I just wasted my time. Okay? So number 1, state the problem. What is the question? What are you looking for? Okay? Number 2, what is the best method to solve the problem? Okay? Should I add it or should I subtract it? Am I supposed to multiply it or am I supposed to divide it? Am I trying to add this and then subtract? What am I trying to do? What is the best way of doing it? Is there a quicker way of doing it? Is there a long way of doing it? Is one more correct? In math, more than anything, it says work smart, don't work hard. If there's a quicker way of doing it, do it. Okay? And then step number 3. You know, a lot of people kind of skip over this one, so pay attention to this. Does the solution make sense? Right? Sometimes you press an extra 0 or you say multiply instead of instead of add on your calculator, and say, for example, the question is, how many slices of pizza did Johnny eat on Tuesday? And you see something like 4,212. And I mean, if you don't remember, if you forgot, if you didn't state the problem, and if you just thought you knew what you're doing and you're writing, and you're like 4,212, whatever I just said. Well, really? Did Johnny eat 4,000 slices of pizza? Really? You know what I mean? So go back to the question. Now that you know what you're trying to find out, look at the answer. Does it make sense? If it makes sense, you're probably more correct than if you look at something and you're like, no, wait, that is just ridiculous. I have no idea what's going on. A good reference to this, I don't know if you've watched this movie, Friends with Benefits, with Justin Timberlake, and his character is just someone that just does not get math. And he would come up with these ridiculous answers, and everyone would just be like, what? Like, how does that even make sense to you? Again, solution does not make sense. You know it's wrong if the solution doesn't make sense. And then, of course, evaluate the results. Normally, there's a way to check your answer. That you just, if it's a word problem, you just put the number right back in the problem, and then you're like, you read it again and you double check it, you know. So if you're doing it one way, normally there's another way of checking it, but we'll go through those methods in more detail as we go ahead. Okay. So for example, how do you, let's do one of these right now so that you can know what I'm talking about. Tootsie Roll Industries sales reached $194 million and a record profit of $22,556,000. Round the sales and profit figures all the way. Okay, so step number 1, we want to make sure we understand the problem. What are we looking for? We want to round the sales and the profit figures all the way. What does all the way mean again? You look at the left digit, okay, that's the one we want to round, and then you look at the very next one, which is step number 2, do your little rhyme, 4 or less, just ignore 5 or more, add 1 more, add it, or just leave it alone if you're not supposed to round it, and then make the rest of your digits 0. If that was a little confusing, rewind a little bit to when I explained the rounding method that we did, and that's what we're doing. So sales of $194 million. Now, when rounding, okay, obviously it's easier to convert them into numbers than it is to round them while they're still in words. So what they did was $194 million. Boom. Write that down as numbers. So that's 194,000,000. Okay? Now we want to round all the way. So we look at the left digit, which is the 1. Okay? We look at the second number, which is the 9, and we do our little rhyme. 4 or less, just ignore. 5 or more, add 1 more. So 9 is more than 5, so we're going to add. What are we going to add it to? To the left digit. So 1 plus 1 becomes 2. Everything else becomes 0. So $194 million, if we round it, becomes $200 million. Okay? So let's look at the profit. $22,556,000. Again, you put it into your dollar number, into your actual numeric numbers, and then you convert it, because it's really hard to round just looking at the English words. So you want to pick the number on the left, which is the 2. Okay? Look at the very next one, which is also a 2. 4 or less, just ignore. 5 or more, add 1 more. So that 2 is less than 4. So it means we ignore it, which means after that number, that first 2, the very left one, we ignore everything else and it just becomes a 0. Okay? So instead of $22,556,000, it is $20 million. Okay? It's just easier. You're pretty close. We made about $200 million in sales, and our profit was about $20 million. Isn't that so much easier and so much more understandable than to say, oh, we made $194 million and we made a record profit of $22,556,000. Like, that's so many numbers that's like, wait, what? Right? That is why we round. So how do you add whole numbers? This is pretty easy. So all you're going to do is you're going to line up the numbers and you're going to make sure that your commas and your decimal points always line up. If they're out of order, if they're not aligned, you're going to add the wrong numbers. So just add the first column and then carry it over, add the second column, carry it over until you have your answer. If you need more help on that, your book explains it really, really well. Okay. Here's, like I said, there's always a way to check this. So add each column as a separate total and then combine. The end result will be the same. So you have all your numbers in one neat little column, and all your commas are in line. Okay? So you're going to add the 2, 3, 4, and 4. So that's your ones, or your units. So you're going to add all your units, then you're going to add all your tens, then you're going to add all your hundreds, and you're going to add all your thousands. So your units is equal to 13. Okay? What I mean by that is that your 13, that number has to end on the column that we're talking about. So that 1, 3 is units. So that 3 has to end on the units column. Go back to that table that we covered in the beginning. Okay? Tens column. What were the numbers? 6 plus 1 plus 2 plus 9. That is equal to 18. Right? It's a lot easier to calculate those numbers. Again, 18. Okay, that 8, because we're talking about the tens column, that 8 has to end on the tens column in that table that we were talking about. Again, hundreds column. 3 plus 9 plus 9 plus 5. That's equal to 26. Again, your hundreds have to end on your hundreds column. Make sense? If you're not sure what I mean by the hundreds column, go back to that table where it explained the units, tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, 100,000s, and keep on going. And then, of course, the same for your $1,000. And you just make sure whatever numbers overlap, like the 1 and the 8, you add those, it becomes a 9, and that's how you check your answer. But, like I said, if you're at the grocery store and you have a budget of, say, $50 that you need to get these certain supplies for a party that you're going to be throwing, but $50 is your budget, you want to make sure you can give the biggest bang for your buck, how do you calculate? Are you going to take a calculator? I've seen a lot of people do this, and add up every single item and then add tax to it at the end? You could do that, or you could round each one and say, well, this is about $5, this is about $4, this is about $5.50, this is about, and you round it so that you can get an estimate. You'll save a lot of time that way. That's exactly what we're doing. So now that you know how to round, I'm assuming you know how to round because we just practiced it, and if you don't, rewind, pause, play, keep doing it. Remember, not only will listening to it repeatedly help you, but keep practicing, okay? Practice is the only thing that will help in math. So 1,362, okay? We want to round that. You look at the 1, look at the next one, which is a 3. It's 4 or less, so you just ignore, so it becomes zeros. And so you round every single one of these numbers, and it's a lot quicker to add 1,000 plus 6,000 plus 9,000 plus 7,000 than it is, that's easy. That you can get 23,000. It's a lot simpler doing that than it is to do 1,362 plus 5,913 plus 8,924, etc., etc. Make sense? So this is a good time-saving technique. So how do you subtract whole numbers? Okay? You want to start with the minuend. That's the number on top. These are fancy names, just the number on top, the minuend, minus the subtrahend. Okay? So you want to make sure that the right number is on the top and the right number is at the bottom. And so I'm not going to explain the whole borrowing technique because I know you guys know how to do that. If you're not sure and you're not comfortable, please let me know and I will explain that to you. I don't want to have to make this video longer because I know, a lot of people have to watch this. But if you need help with this, please reach out to me. I will help you. Okay? So you say 130 minus 60 and you get 70. How do you know that this is right? Okay? Easy. You add the difference and the subtrahend. Okay? That's the bottom number and the answer. You want to add those two, and if that equals to the number on top, the minuend, that means you got it right. Okay. Again, multiplication of whole numbers. Your multiplicand is at the top and your multiplier is at the bottom. And always have it lined up so that the units are in one row, the tens are in one row, etc., etc. Okay, so how do you, this is a continuation. So first, you want to make sure that you multiply the top number, so 418. You want to multiply that by 2, and you get 836. Okay? But then, you want to make sure that you multiply the rest of it, so you want to multiply 418 by 5, or actually more accurately by 50, and then you'll get the answer. So your total answer will be 21,736. Okay, so how do you check this? You want to, one of the other benefits of estimating is that you can kind of see, am I kind of close to what I thought it would be? So 50, you can round it to 52, you can round it down to 50, and 418, you can round it to 400. 50 and 400, 50 times 400 is 20,000. Is 20,000 similar to 21,736? It's pretty close, so that's how you check it, to make sure you know what you're doing. Okay? Another way of doing it is to make sure that whatever your multiplicand and your multiplier was, just turn it around. Multiplying and adding are the only two where you can flip them around and get the same answer. If you do the same for dividing, it's not going to be the same. And if you do the same for subtracting, you're not going to get the same answer. So only for multiplying and adding can you switch it around the top and the bottom and the bottom and the top to check if you got it right. Okay, so I just went over this already. So how do you multiply? If you have all these zeros, are you going to say, you know that anything times 0 is 0. So 500 times 0 is 0. 200 times 0 is 0. So instead of wasting time going 0 times 0 is 0, 0 times 0 is 0, a quick way of multiplying everything is just cut off all the zeros at the end, right, and then see how many did you cut off. So in 65,000, we cut off 3. In 420, we cut off 1. So there are 4 zeros. So now that we cut off the zeros, we're left with 65 times 42. That's a lot easier because that's only 2 digits each versus 5 digits and 3 digits. So we do our little multiplication, but because we cut those zeros off, we have to put them back on. So how many zeros did we have? 4. So we just put those 4 zeros right at the very end, and it makes sense. That's our answer. So, how do you multiply a whole number by a power of 10? A power of 10 is anything that ends in a, that starts with a 1, and how many zeros are there? So 10, 100, 1,000. Every single one of those columns in the table that from the beginning of the lecture, those are powers of 10. So, count the number of zeros in the power of 10. So if they say 99 times 10, how many zeros in 10? 1. 99 times 1,000. How many zeros in 1,000? 3. And the number of zeros that you count is the number of zeros that you add at the end. Make sense? So 99 times 1 is 99, and then we just add the 0. 99 times 100, we'd add 2 zeros. 99 times 1,000, we add 3 zeros. Okay, So now let's talk about division, okay? Now, what is division? Okay, when you're asking what is this divided by this, you're trying to figure out how many times does this number fit into this big number. Okay, if I wanted to break this big number into quantities of this little number, how many little quantities would I be able to make? So the number on the outside is your divisor, and the number that you're trying to divide is your dividend. And the answer to any division question is your quotient. I don't know why it's so fancy, but it's your quotient. Okay? So first step, how many times does 15 go into 2? Nothing. Leave it blank. How many times does 15 go into 27? Well, 15 goes into 27 once. So you write 1 on top. 1 times 15 is 15, so you write that 15 at the bottom. 27 minus 15 is 12, and then you're going to bring down the 0. How many times does 15 go into 120? 8 times, and it's a cycle, you keep going. 15 goes into 120 8 times, 8 times 15 is 120, 120 minus 120 is 0, and voila! 15 goes into 270 18 times. Okay? Now what if it doesn't fit perfectly? Okay? Well, all you do then is that number that's left, you just call it remainder 1. Okay, so 7 goes into 1, it doesn't go. So you leave that blank. 7 goes into 16 twice. 2 times 7 is 14. Right? So you write the 14 underneath the 16. You say 16 minus 14 is equal to 2. Bring down the 9. How many times does 7 go into 29? It goes 4 times. 4 times 7 is 28. 29 minus 28 is 1. Now we ran out of digits. There's nothing more that we could bring down. So we're left with 1, so we just say it is remainder 1. Okay? 7 fits into 169 24 times, but it doesn't fit perfectly. There's 1 left over that we didn't know what to do with. If it was 168, it would have fit in perfectly. Okay, so now how do you check division? Okay, now you check your answer and you multiply it. The opposite of adding is subtracting, and the opposite of subtracting is adding. The opposite of multiplying is dividing, and the opposite of dividing is multiplying. So to check, you normally have to do the opposite, okay? And then of course you can round them. So if you're going to round 138, you can round it down to 100, and 5,000 you round it down to 5,079, you round it down to 5,000, and you get about 50. 50 is pretty close to 36. I mean, this wouldn't be a really good example, but you're kind of in the same area. If your answer was 240, then you'd be like, okay, wait, something is wrong there. Okay, how do you divide? The same thing with multiplying. If you're doing it to the power of 10, in multiplying, you add zeros. If it's multiply 1,000, you add 3 zeros. If it's multiplying by 1,000,000, you add 6 zeros, right? Dividing is the opposite. You take away those zeros, okay? So 95,000 divided by 10, how many zeros does 10 have? 1. How many zeros do you take out? Just 1. Remember to move your comma around, because your comma has to come after every 3 digits, okay? If it's not in every 3 digits, you can't just say 95,00. No, you have to rearrange it so that it's after 3 digits, which is the 500. Okay, and that is it for today. While we went through that pretty quickly. So what I want you to do now is, now that you've watched it, I want you to send me a summary of the notes. I want you to do the questions that are on the PowerPoint. I want you to work them out yourself and email that to me. This is due by midnight on Tuesday, which is the October 8th, and it's an easy 25 points. And you know, you can just, like I said earlier, if you do all of these, if you do really well, you just have to send me your notes. And you can bump your entire grade 2 letter grades. So you can go from a D to a B, or from a C to an A. Again, if you have any questions. If I went over something and it was too quick, let me know. I will help you. Other than that, I'm looking forward to this class. I hope you are too. I hope this has calmed down some of your math anxiety if you had it. You'll learn a lot in this class, but we do cover a lot of material, so stay on top of your homework because math builds on itself. If you don't know what a whole number is and if you don't know how to add and divide, you're not going to be able to do percents and decimal and markups and markdown and all the things that we're going to cover. Okay, so other than that, I will see you another recording on Thursday, and we will have the live lecture at 8 p.m. on Thursday night as well, Central Time. Have your homework. I hope you attempt some of your homework. I'll help you with it. We'll go over some of the homework that's due tomorrow as well, so you can know how we're doing. Okay, other than that, have a great week.